Jesus says, I'll show you how to apply the end of days. And so he does. And what he does is he gives us 5 quick stories. Have you ever wondered about those stories? You know, the virgins and all these stories that Jesus tells rapid fire at the end of his ministry with the disciples listening in this rapid fire. And basically the summary is, he says, I want you to know my plan. I want you to keep watch. I want you to avoid distractions. I want you to live for what counts, and I don't want you to waste your life. Now, look at, starting in chapter 24, and I talked so much I didn't get there, Matthew 24, and look what Jesus says, starting in verse 32. Now, learn this parable. He's just finished. Look at verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven. It doesn't say it's a blood moon, but it's going to be darkened. The sign of the Son of Man, verse 30, will appear in the heavens. And verse 31, he will send forth his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the 4 winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Jesus ends his survey of the future, by the way, which parallels Revelation 6 onward in an amazing way. And then look what he says. Now, here's how you apply it. Use your prophetic, the disciples were eating this up. They were having a private briefing by the God of the universe about the future, and he was pointing out what buildings were going to get destroyed and what weren't, and they were just all over it. And it was very interesting to them, like it is to us. And look what Jesus says. Now, learn a parable from the fig tree. And lesson number 1 is the trends that Jesus says are going to be visible. When you see all these things, know it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Jesus said, know my plan, not so you can get the Prepper 7,000 meal kit. That wasn't the idea. Know that God is in charge of history and that he has a plan. Now remember, we've already looked way back in 2008 and 2009. If you can remember so far back, we looked at what the earth looks like when Jesus returns. Now see, that's a way of looking at prophecy. If you look at the earth at the second coming, then you know just before his second coming, those things are in place. And there's a lot of them that we all know now. With the new Meerkat and Periscope apps, you can live stream from your phone. Live stream. You can become a CNN person and live stream to the web real-time events with just a little app through Wi-Fi. That's why Jesus said, when I return, in Revelation 11, he already told us that everyone in the world will be watching what I just showed you, those 2 witnesses being killed by the Antichrist. Now, for centuries, people said, well, obviously that's hyperbole, because nobody in the world watched anything except what was in their town, unless they traveled by horseback or ship or walked or chariot or something. But they didn't watch everything at once. They heard about it. In fact, the emperor of Rome died, and some of the generals on the front line didn't know it for almost a year. Wow. That's how slow life was back then. And they had to come back to Rome and find out who their new supreme commander was, because news traveled at the speed of horse, not at the speed of light. So the first thing Jesus said is, you can know the plan. And you can read that. The sign of the Son of Man, verse 30, will appear in the heavens, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in his clouds of power and great glory, and all that. Now look at verse 32, parable 32 to 35. He continues and says, now learn the parable from this. When the branch has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, that's the trends. Jesus said they're like birth pangs. And what's going to happen is there's going to be earthquakes, but there's always been earthquakes, but there are going to be earthquakes and more earthquakes, and they're going to get closer, and they're going to get bigger. And there are going to be wars, and there's always been wars, but there are going to be wars, and they're going to be closer, and there are going to be ethnic divisions, nation against nation, people group against people group, and it's going to just kind of break loose all the combo we've done. So that's number 1. Now look at verse 36. He says, I want you to keep watch. The day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. For as in the days of Noah were, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. What were the days of Noah like? People were eating and drinking and giving in marriage, and they were only thinking evil continually. I mean, the days of Noah are times of peace and prosperity and normal things going on and a lot of sin. And Jesus said, keep watch. For as in the days, verse 36, before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark. And they didn't know the flood until the flood came and took them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. It will be totally unexpected. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, the women will be grinding. Watch, therefore, you don't know when the Lord is coming. Jesus is talking to people that are saved. And what he's saying is, if you think about it, and just for a moment think about it, what he's saying, there are these examples. For example, there's Lot, and Lot was saved out of the destruction. He was dragged right out of the destruction. And through it, basically, he was in Sodom, dragged out, and it was burned up. Abraham was kept from the destruction. He moved his tent and never went in there, and the people of Sodom were destroyed in it. So there's always, if you notice, these three groupings. Look at Enoch. Enoch was saved out before the flood. Noah was saved out in the ark through the flood. And the rest of the people, the world, was destroyed during the flood. And those are just two simple examples that Jesus uses Noah, but he also says, remember Lot and Lot's wife and all that, one of the shortest of his imperatives. Noah is a picture of Israel being saved in the ark of safety, protected by God through the destruction. Enoch is before, that's the church, that's the raptured ones, and this is the world that's destroyed. And so even in the days of Noah, you have Enoch getting out before it happens. You have Noah and those 8 souls that were with him in the ark being saved through it. And so what the Lord is saying is, I want you to keep watch. And when you start seeing these things happening, know that your redemption draws near. And we could go through that, but verse 44 says it well. Therefore be ready, for the Son of Man is coming in an hour you don't expect. Did you know they caught that message? Did you know the early church almost universally was constantly saying, might be today, might be today. I want to live today like Jesus is coming today. Paul used personal pronouns. For we shall be caught up together with him in the air. And we. And he's acting like he's part of the group going in the rapture 2,000 years ago. That's how they listened to what Christ said. And Jesus said, therefore be ready. They says, we want to keep watch. He's coming quickly. We want to be ready. Now look at verse 45. His third story. Each of these are so unique. They're an amazing little story. And this one is about avoiding distraction. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, verse 45, whom his master has made ruler? Christ left us to do something. He gave us the Great Commission. He filled us with his Spirit. He gave us gifts and calling. And blessed is that servant, verse 46. Remember, we want to be well done, good and faithful servant. How do we do that? Blessed is that servant whom the master, when he comes, will find doing what he left him doing. Are we? Or are we weighed down with the cares of this life? Are we so busy trying to buy the biggest possible house? And we're going to squeeze for a while and work 2 jobs to afford that house. And it cripples us from being flexible, responsive, and it puts our roots and our stakes deeper and deeper in this world. Nothing wrong with nice houses, especially those that open them up for the early church and allowed the church to meet 100 people in a home, like the early church met in both Jerusalem and in Ephesus. But I'm not sure. The Lord says riches are dangerous and they cause great care. There's a care that's needed for riches. The more I have, the more I want. The more I have, the more you want it. The more I have, the more I can lose. I mean, there's so many cares of riches. So avoid the distraction, Jesus says, of thinking, verse 48, my master is delaying, Jesus isn't coming very quickly, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eat and drink with the drunkards. And there's a lot of ways we could apply that. And the master of that servant will come in a day when he's not looking, in an hour, and will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. And there'll be, that's bad, weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's always a sign of lostness. And these are the people that say they follow Christ, but their lives, they're not avoiding distractions. Then here's the last one. Look at 25, last two, 25, 1 to 13. Remember, there's no second chance to live for the Lord. That's the parable of the foolish virgins, and they aren't ready. And then finally, verses 14 downward to 30. Don't waste your life. The Lord of those servants, 25:19, comes and settles accounts. And that's where that text comes from, verse 21 of 25, Matthew 21 or 25:21. Well done, good and faithful servant. You are faithful over a few things. I'll make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Verse 23, his Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servants. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Faithfulness equals fruitfulness. And he's equating that there are degrees of rewards. That's what verse 20 is about. And beware of wasting your life.